Woohoo!
So I want to continue our conversation about existentialism today.
Okay.
And one of the things that we talked about in terms of existentialist philosophy were these moments where our decisions take on added weight in our lives. Those sometimes are called existential moments or existential crises. So the point is, if we are a result of our choices, those choices become very important.
Yeah.
Let's step back a little bit and let's kind of understand, like, not every philosophy, of course, subscribes to this, that our choices matter. So I want to talk about some other philosophical systems and then talk about existentialism and how they feel. So let's start with a broad terminology for what I would say is almost the exact opposite of existentialism, and that is predetermination. Can you take a guess as to what that might mean?
Like, just judging by the names, it sort of mean that like everything that happens or that everything that you choose to do is predetermined.
Yeah, right. So it essentially subscribes to the idea that everything we do, and even our choices and everything else, are all predetermined, and so there's no way to escape that fate. Can you talk to me how predeterminism is built into religion, or some religions?
A lot of religions believe in like sort of a higher power. So when you believe in a higher power that is all-powerful and that can control everything, then it starts to feel like everything is already set in motion and nothing can be changed from what they from what they want it to be. So it's already predetermined.
Right. I think you described it perfectly. If there's an all-knowing, all-powerful being who is the creator of the universe, since it knows everything, it knows the future, and that future must be determined then.
Yeah.
Historically, there was a big division in Christianity from predeterminists versus people who felt that our choices did matter.
Yeah.
And so that's been a continuing debate even within Christianity itself. Do you think science purports any elements of predetermination?
Like in the large scale, there are patterns in history of like large events that occur. Scientists believe that like some things can be predicted, like climate change and like just like generally weather stuff and like events on the Earth.
So let's talk about it a little bit. Think of physics. Have you studied any physics? Do you feel like you have any grasp of physics at all?
Like just a little bit.
So consider causality. And think of two billiard balls, right? Let's use the most simple example of physics. Billiard ball A is hit, and it connects with billiard ball B. Billiard ball B then moves based on how it was impacted by billiard ball A.
Yeah.
Scientists and physicists talk about much smaller phenomena in the same way. So an atom impacting another atom, or a molecule impacting another molecule. It's mechanistic, in other words.
Yeah.
And all of that was set in motion, 12.8 billion years ago, something like that, from an initial Big Bang. Well, so the fact that scientists can even claim that they know what happened 12 point some billion years ago, and scientists would also claim that they know exactly how the sun will decay and die.
Yeah.
They know how the universe will decay and die. And all of these things they can predict because
they study the rules of the universe.
Right, and those laws of physics are immutable. They can't be changed. Does science have that element of predetermination?
Yeah, I'm not sure it necessarily has that view on like free will and what we do, but just from the events that have occurred beforehand that we can see, in terms of physics, because it's like the base level of science, because it's literally just the laws about the universe and how that functions and how that works, because they can tell how things will react to each other and how things move and work and change, you can follow those cause and effect chains far into the past, and you can also follow them far into the future, just from where you are now in the present. And like that's sort of incredible.
Well, and I think that in terms of our question of predetermination, physics wouldn't be able to make those claims if those things weren't already determined.
Yeah.
If those motions weren't already set in motion. The sciences are predeterministic, maybe even more so than religion. Let's get back to existentialism, right, which is about feelings as humans. If you're a predeterminist, right, how does that impact the importance of your decisions?
It makes them seem not very important at all. Like, when you think that everything is set in motion, when you think that everything is inevitable and already the future is laid out and you're going to reach it, your individual choices they make every single day, even the ones that seem like they could hold a large impact, suddenly don't seem very impactful at all, because no matter what you do, you're not going to change the future, whether it be good or bad.
I think that's a pretty accurate description of how that could feel. So when you talked about the impact of your decisions, in existentialism, they talk about the heaviness and the lightness of being to some degree, or the heaviness of those moments. So if we live in a predeterministic universe, do your decisions feel heavy or do they feel light?
Definitely they feel very light, because like a decision isn't even really a decision then. It's more just like following the path that's been given to you.
So can you describe how that lightness would feel as a human being? Would that be a nice feeling or is that a scary feeling?
I think that if you believe that none of your choices matter, like at all, it's kind of similar to the feeling given by existentialism, except in a similar way. Like freeing, but also terrifying. Because if your choices don't matter at all, then that gives you the ability to do basically whatever you want, to like not worry at all about the impact of your decisions. But it's also really scary to know that like you can't do anything. Like it feels like you don't really have yourself, you don't really have a choice, you don't have free will, you don't have any freedom at all, really, when you get down to it. Because no matter what, you're not going to change anything. Your choices don't matter at all, and that's terrifying.
So I think that how that would feel would also be impacted as to whether you were maybe religious or scientific.
Yeah.
Predetermination, right? Because in religion, the predetermination is because there is what?
An all-powerful, all-knowing being.
Who in most religions cares about you.
Yeah.
You'll see that in a lot of the way that religious people will talk. Have you ever seen a religious person talk about a loved one dying or an illness that they might get? How do they talk about that?
It's all part of God's plan.
It's all part of God's plan, right? You don't have to fear or worry about that.
Yeah.
How would a scientist describe that? An illness.
An illness.
How would they describe the illness happening and its consequences? And
probably we describe it, how they got the illness, how the illness progresses over time, what this illness means, how likely the illness is that it could lead to death. But also, like, definitely, if it's like a loved one or it's themselves, then there's definitely going to be sadness. And like with the religious people, there's going to be sadness as well, even if it is part of a God's plan, because no matter what, it's still a death, it's still an illness, it still feels like a very bad thing. But with a scientist, it feels like a very bad thing because this could kill you or someone that you care about. And then there's no reassurance that it's all going to turn out okay in the end, because based on the illness itself, based on the facts that you know about the illness, there's a very good chance that it's not going to turn out okay.
Well, I think that actually Sigmund Freud had a really good statement about how science views nature. And that is, nature is inimical to our own happiness. And that means nature doesn't care whether humans are happy or not.
Definitely.
Right? So we've talked about the lightness that not having your choices matter feels like.
Yeah.
Can you talk about how an existentialist view of the universe changes that?
When it comes to existentialism, you believe that your choices do matter. So for smaller decisions, the lightness might still remain because you don't really believe that there's going to be any real, true consequences to your actions. But when it gets further along the scale, when these decisions start to gain more and more impact, possible impact on your life, because you believe that any choice is really truly a choice and leads to two possible outcomes that could be good and bad, then the heaviness starts to weigh on you. Because this choice that you make is going to have a serious impact on your life and possibly even other lives. And that means that if you choose incorrectly, it can have some serious, horrible consequences. So the pressure is on you, the weight is on you to make the right choice or the best choice that you could possibly can make in that circumstance so that your life won't be possibly ruined.
Yeah, I mean, if our existence precedes our essence, and our essence is not only at one point, but consistently generated by the decisions we're making, those decisions become essential.
Yeah.
I think an existentialist way to describe that is that you feel the weight of responsibility.
Definitely.
You're a person, you haven't necessarily considered these things in view of predetermination or existentialism or anything else. How do you feel about your decisions?
Well, I definitely think there's a certain truth to scientists and physics way of thinking about things. Like, things are set in motion, and there's there's a certainty that they're going to come into something else eventually. But also, something that's different about religion and science's view of predeterminism is that science's view, it's like large and small scale, but it feels much more large scale. Like, the sun is going to explode, definitely, but when it comes to religion, it's like God is inside my brain and is making these choices for me, maybe.
Well, I think that science is much more detailed in its diagnosis of what has happened previously and what will happen moving forward.
Yeah.
What I'm really trying to ask, though, is how do you feel?
I think that science is right about its whole chain, cause and effect chain, physics, oh, the sun's going to explode thing. But I think that it comes to my life, and it comes to when you really get down to it, and you come to me and my free will and my choices and decisions that I get to make, those things aren't set in stone. Like, those things are not predetermined. Those things are up to me. Those things belong to me. And I get to choose whether it goes one way or the other. And that they can be really important choices. So I guess that I would say that I'm more on the existentialist rather than the predetermined view.
Have you ever felt the weight of a decision?
Yeah. Like, I'm not really sure if I can give like a super specific example, but I definitely have felt like the weight of a decision, like thinking like this is a big deal.
How does that feel?
It feels like really scary. Like, it's like, because when it gets down to it, it's like the only one that I can rely on for this choice is me. Like, there's no one, like, I ultimately am the one that makes this decision for myself. I am in control of my own life. And that's terrifying because your life and you, like, that's all you have. Like, you are going to make a decision that impacts who you are and the rest of your life really greatly. And that decision relies on you. And especially when the decision isn't just as simple as like saying yes or no, or like this path or that path, it feels like the weight is definitely there weighing down on me. Like the weight of my future, the weight of my life, the weight of myself.
So now we have sort of all the terms that we need to kind of understand these existential moments. It's where the weight of this decision weighs on you so heavily that it can paralyze you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Have you ever felt that?
Definitely.
So you can see the difference between a scientific view or a predeterministic religious view and the existentialist view in the way that we're talking about the world. The existentialist view takes your feelings and what it feels like to be a human as primary, as the source of knowledge.
Yeah.
Whereas physicists could largely argue that those are symptoms of a much more predetermined physical reality that's actually happening underneath.
We hope that you enjoyed that video, and if you did, please consider checking out the next one in the series.
Or some of our other series on philosophy and life.
We upload videos every Friday, so don't forget to like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe. See you next week.